You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. All right, and welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, Mike Riley. Welcome back, everybody. It is our first show back from the new year. Happy New Year. Happy 2017 to everybody. I am glad we all made it. There is some round of applause there for all of the people who are joining us here, all of our new listeners who are tuning in from iTunes, from Stitcher, from Google Play. We want to thank all of our new subscribers. Of course, I am your host, Mike Riley. I think I said that earlier. It is Thursday, January 12th, 2017. I have my lovely co-hosts joining me again, Miss Charlie and Miss Cam. Hello, ladies. Welcome back.
Hi.
All right. Happy New Year to you. And, of course, we have the executive director of Young Angels, Miss Brooke Docherty, in the house. She is Facebook Live and everything. So make sure that if you are Brooke's friend on Facebook, you go ahead and check that out. So welcome to the new year. We're going to jump right into it. We have a very, very, very special guest who's going to be joining us for the first segment of the show today. It's Miss Holly Mosher. She is a American filmmaker who produces and directs amazing documentaries. One that in particular is called Pay to Play, which is how I stumbled upon Holly. And it's an amazing documentary about money and politics and about the entire process and how it works. And it's something that I think we should all kind of dig into. But yeah, you can definitely check her out. Holly, welcome to the show. Are you there?
Yes. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it is my pleasure. It is my pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. So one of the big things that, just to kind of jump into it, this is our first show back since the new year, and so much stuff has been happening since then. I mean, all of this, 8 days until Donald Trump becomes president and or gets sworn in as president. And there's been so many things going on as far as all of the pay-to-play stuff, not necessarily pay-to-play, but the conflict of interest, a lot of the big business things. We saw this big press conference that happened yesterday. There was the big town hall meetings that have been going on. But in the midst of all that, there's still this kind of this underlying tone that's been kind of circling around about the legitimacy of Donald Trump's presidency. And a lot of it has to do with the election results. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, the election's over, the Electoral College has happened, everything's come and gone. But, there's still a certain element that exists that's not really being touched upon, especially by the Democratic Party. And that's this issue of voter suppression. There's this gentleman by the name of Greg Palast. He wrote an article for the Rolling Stone that talked about what's called crosscheck voting. And this is a system that was put in place by the Kansas Secretary of State. He goes by the name of Kris Kobach. And just to give you some background information for all of our listeners, Kris Kobach was the one who orchestrated was it the Arizona law that was like an immigration Arizona law where, he also orchestrated another one in Alabama. Basically, this guy's kind of like bad news. And Holly, I know you were one of the ones who was kind of bringing a lot of this to the attention of people, right?
Yeah, well, we made a film called Free for All that we actually finished in 2008 that looked at how elections get stolen and what voter suppression happens. And I saw the writing on the wall a little bit in March when we saw people's parties were flipping across the country so they couldn't vote in the primaries. And then, we saw in Brooklyn 126,000 people couldn't vote. And then the audit in Chicago had a 19% discrepancy. And then, of course, in Maricopa County in Arizona, they had 60 polling places instead of when they used to have 400. So people were waiting till midnight, and a lot of people just left and didn't vote.
Right.
So I started putting our film back online for free and trying to get the word out so that people would wake up and see what was happening. And then I started to see what Greg Palast predicted. He said 7.2 million suspects or, people or voters were caught in this interstate crosscheck, and he submitted a petition to the DOJ asking them to look into this. And the media failed. Only Rolling Stone covered this
Right.
before the election, and then it was the recount that made the Washington Post and other people talk about this. And
Right.
They said, well, forget about the recount. Election fraud actually happened. And it's like, oh, you're writing about this now after the election?
Right.
There should have been far more stories on this.
And this is something that's been kind of going on for quite some time. I mean, the original sin in kind of election fraud kind of happened after the 2000 election, and then when they started introducing electronic voting machines and everything else like that, I mean, it kind of picked up the level of voter suppression. And, why do you think this is something that the Democratic Party is really not paying that much attention to?
I can't say why anybody is not paying attention to this.
Right.
To me, it's screaming, like when you're talking about the difference, the Electoral College, it was 11,000 votes in Michigan. It was 22,000 votes in Wisconsin, and a difference of 46,000 votes in Pennsylvania.
We're
that's less
like
than
pennies.
80,000.
Right.
Yeah, that's less than 80,000 people. And then there was a popular vote difference of almost 3 million. So,
wow. Yeah.
We've got to be looking at gerrymandering, and we've got to be looking at voter, protecting everybody's rights to vote. I mean, when the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court, Congress, people did put bills forward, but nothing happened because we have a standstill Congress. But we even had, I'm from Wisconsin originally, and even Rep. Sensenbrenner, who wrote the Patriot Act, put forward a bill on the Voting Rights Act and, saying that they needed to protect people again. So I was hopeful that something was happening, but the pressure didn't happen to bring people together. And I was actually part of a group called Democracy Spring and Democracy Awakening,
Yes.
where we marched to the Capitol and spent a week on the Capitol demanding voter protection as well as getting money out of politics.
Right, exactly.
That's why we were there. And then the media barely covered this.
Yeah, it's not something that's really on their radar as far as the media is concerned. So it's not really getting that attention. I mean, there's been so much focus on like the Russian hacking and these types of things versus actually talking about one of the main things that may have handed the election to Donald Trump actually may have been this cross-check voting. And can you explain cross-check voting for people who just don't understand it?
Yeah, so basically they take anybody who has a similar name, they eliminate people across state borders saying, no, they're voting in Ohio, and no, they're voting across the border in Pennsylvania. They have the same name. But they only found 4 repeat, out of that 7.2 million, they only found 4 repeat names.
Right.
So it's not, it's hard enough to get people to vote once, let alone vote twice. There's a few crazy people. There's a handful. They say the chances are less than getting hit by lightning. That voter fraud. People
fraud.
were talking about voter fraud.
Yeah,
but
people
there's
actually
election fraud and there's voter suppression.
Exactly.
And it's great that people are finally understanding the differences. I feel like that's the first battle we're getting.
Right. Yeah. People are kind of understanding that there's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
But Kris Kobach.
And then,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, even in our film, though, there's been voter misinformation in the voter ID bills, which are also frightening. But every election season, there's all sorts of shenanigans going on, and they just try to pick off voters, in different districts. And they say that if you're African American, you have a 900% higher chance of having your vote not counted.
That is very true.
So,
one of the big things that was big on cross-check voting was, in a lot of states, felons are not allowed to vote. If you've committed a felony before, you're not allowed to vote. And one of the things that they were doing was they were finding a lot of people who are African American or brown who had, similar last names. And they were, comparing them to other people. So in other words, if my name is like, Derek Johnson, and I'm voting in the state of Texas, and I go to vote, they'll say, well, Derek Johnson's a felon in the state of Florida, and he's trying to vote.
Exactly.
And this is one of these cross-check voting things that they were doing. And then another thing that they were doing, I was hearing about, they were handing people provisional ballots and giving these people provisional ballots, and their provisional ballots were just simply being thrown away. I mean, I don't know if there's, because the provisional ballots are
in California, they've been doing a really good job of counting our provisional ballots.
Okay.
But in other states, that's not always the case. We had a really good Secretary of State, Deborah Bowen, who outlawed a lot of these voting machines that were still in use in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, for example. And she made sure we had paper ballots. And, there's simple things that we could do across the entire country, but it's all in different districts.
Right.
And we really need to, clean up, district by district. So that's the frustrating thing. It's there's no federal way to just simply quickly make one easy voting, how people vote that's safe and effective and is not disenfranchising anybody.
Yeah, and with the new, in 2020, we're having another census being taken, which means that they're going to redraw the districts again. And that means that the gerrymandering has the potential to kind of come back in a lot of states that are kind of, traditionally ran by Republican governors. I don't know. What do you think? We have seen
a few court cases now, like the Supreme Court just found the Wisconsin gerrymandering or redistricting unconstitutional, and they've made Florida go back and redo their lines. And so we need to be pushing. Half the states have good districting where it's done in a fair way, and half are definitely very partisan. So we need. To me, that's one of the most important issues with all of this, because that's why you see such an unbalanced House. There can be states where, it's a swing state. It's about, going 50-50 practically every time, but their House will be like 75-25 just because of the way the lines are drawn.
Yeah.
So, this all goes hand in hand. The thing is, there's not one blanket solution. We need to focus on, voting rights. We need to focus on, fair redistricting.
And also
getting money out of politics.
Yeah,
all of it.
there's a lot of issues there. And then also, too, the issue of electronic voting machines. I mean, I don't know if that's something that's kind of touched on in your documentary, but I know for a lot of people who talk about going back to paper ballots only because that seems to be a more effective way of counting the vote versus dealing with electronic voting machines that are kind of owned by private corporations.
Yeah. I mean, they've shown these machines can be hacked in less than a minute.
Right.
There's Alex Holderman at the University of Michigan. His students always come together and test, and they're always able to break in and hack into these machines. And at Berkeley, there's another group, and it's just
that's insane.
They're not secure.
Yeah.
And then you see that they break down. In Detroit, I think there were 87 machines that were broken that day. And so we had the Help America Vote Act in 2002, which came because of the whole fiasco in Florida with the hanging chads in 2000. And that basically made the country spent almost $4 billion on these electronic voting machines and forced it on people. But a lot of them were already outdated. So we're dealing with very old technology that is not secure. And in Wisconsin, the FBI said that they were not linked to the internet, but that in fact they did find in the recount that several of the machines were linked to the internet and were reporting the vote at the end of the night, via the internet. So because it's so different in every different location and the different machines they're using and the different rules, it creates a lot of chaos, and it's really hard to unify people. Once the election comes and goes, the interest wanes.
Right.
And it's no, we should be pushing the DOJ, to help support, to call for a look into this crosscheck program and see how many of these people they said were felons who were not. It's these are not, in our film, they were. We showed how they were. Greg Palast was also talking about how 100,000 people in Florida were cut from the rolls in 2000, where they were saying,
Holly, we're about to hit a break right now. Can give me 1 second.
Sure.
To the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. All right, sorry about that. We have our little interlude to give our listeners a little break with their ears, but we are joined here by Holly Mosher. The website is paytoplay.tv, and how can people find your new documentary, by the way, too? Not to jump you off the subject real quick. We
have both now on one website, saveourelections.org.
Awesome, saveourelections.org. Okay, great. And I would definitely encourage everybody to go watch it. Did you say it's up for free right now?
Yeah, you can watch free for all. It says it's $2.99, but it's for some reason, and I was trying to have it for free, but it plays when you watch the free for all one.
Right.
And then there's a code for pay to play that you can put in.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, we have to definitely encourage everybody to check that out. Before we let you go, I just wanted to ask you one more time and kind of circle back what we were talking about earlier before the break about cross-check voting and kind of educating people on it. What do you think is the solution to kind of educating people on the subject and to get people to take it a little more seriously? I mean, like you said, it's hard enough to try to get people to get out and vote. That's like pulling teeth as it is. And let alone dealing with voter suppression is something that so many people are unaware of, especially since our media, like you said, doesn't really cover it. What do you think is a way to kind of get people in the loop, if there is a way?
I think we have to help take other people to the polls, and we have to, especially younger people, and make sure they understand everything. And if you're there, like, become a poll observer, or, sign up to be a worker that day, because you're going to learn so much, and it's actually, a day, a job for the day.
Yeah,
become a poll worker. I actually know a lot of people who were upset with the primaries, so then they went and became poll workers.
Oh, yeah.
And they learned so much, and it really opened their eyes to things.
Yeah.
Just talk to people about it, because we need to spread the word of the mouth. The media is not doing an adequate job, and we wouldn't, the world would look very different if we didn't have the voter suppression. Like they said in Milwaukee, where I'm from, that probably about 50,000 people didn't vote because of the voter ID.
Because of the voter ID
and
laws,
yeah. 11% of Americans, according to the Brennan Center, which is out of NYU, do not have a valid form of ID for voting.
Why is voting not a constitutional right, you think?
It needs to be. Well, remember, back in the beginning of the country, only a certain group, you and I both could not vote.
Could not vote, exactly. Very true. Yeah.
Let's not forget that voting in the beginning was not for all. And we should create a constitutional amendment so that protects every person's right to vote.
Wow.
And I'm actually in favor of mandatory voting. I lived in Brazil for 3 years and saw that they had an election day holiday. They had free airtime for all the politicians. They got an equal amount of time, so it wasn't this negative ads. It was just the politicians speaking to the people directly. It wasn't the debate. It was just, each person
Now,
directly.
Are their elections publicly funded? Is that the reason why they get equal airtime? They're not, like, dealing with special interests and super PACs and all this other stuff?
That doesn't even – they're not – but that doesn't cost anything because it's the public airwaves. It doesn't cost anything for the media to actually give the free airtime. So that would be something we could do here. That doesn't cost anything, and it would lower the cost of all of our elections. And I definitely think we should do publicly funded campaigns so that candidates are not beholden to special interests.
I agree.
And then the mandatory voting works well. There was just there, and in Australia, there's just a small fine, and then we know, who the people really want, and if they want to put in a none of the above,
or write in like Mickey Mouse or something,
so it's like then we'll really know. But there's so many things we need to fix. The machine counts, like in Michigan, they said that there were 75,000 undervotes, but most of the votes, if you actually looked at them, probably had the voter was trying to do something, but maybe it wasn't dark enough, or for some reason the machine didn't read the marking. Like, only looking at these ballots by hand would you see the intent. So it's very important to have hand counts, to have automatic,
right,
audits where they look at least
yeah,
at a
and,
certain percentage
election
by hand
audits,
to make sure.
Yeah, and election audits are pretty routine in like most other countries, right? Like you go to like England, they have election audits and they do that type of thing. And I mean, that's a normal process, right? I mean,
yeah, and then the Brexit is one, they hand counted 30 million votes overnight. So there was, not through the machine, hand counted in one night. So when people, and that actually, gives people jobs instead of it all being by the machines. The group out of Michigan showed that we could have, hand counted ballots every time, and versus the money you put into the machines, because those machines are only good 8 to 10 years. They're not being used all the time. It's such a waste. We could be employing people to be counting the ballots every time, and it's much more secure.
What a grand idea.
There's so much we could do. I know it's a little complicated and all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch our films, learn about voter fraud. And Greg Palast has his own film that talks about crosscheck, because that was something new, and that one's called "The Best Democracy Money Can Buy."
Yes.
And read his article in Rolling Stone.
Yes, and that's that. Yeah. And for all my listeners out there, that article is up on the front page at MikeRileyNow.com. And Holly, I will actually plug your new film on the front page too, so that way people can check it out. So,
great! Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you so much for being a guest on the show today and educating us on this. I mean, this is such an important issue. If you ask me, it's something that we should be paying a little more attention to.
A lot.
I mean, a lot more attention to. Yeah, I speak with hyperbole.
We would not be in this chaos right now.
Yeah, no, we would not be in this if we didn't have this. And the efforts that Jill Stein led should have been had more attention put towards it. And I personally, in my personal opinion, this is something that we should really be focusing on so much more in the future, because this will happen again. It is inevitable. We have another election coming up here in a couple years, and this will happen again. So we need to be on the lookout. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, Holly, thank you so much. You. How can people find you? Can people find you on the social media machines?
Yeah, I'm. My website is Filmmaker for Change, and my Twitter is Films for Change.
Films for Change. All
so
right,
you
awesome.
you can find me there.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Holly, thank you so much again. God bless you. Have a great night. Thanks a lot for joining us.
You too.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right, y'all. And that was Holly Mosher. Yes, check her out. Interesting conversation. I swear, I nearly erupted when she said we should have mandatory voting. I was like, yeah.
We were all silently clapping like seals.
Just like, yes, compulsory voting. Bring it to the United States, please.
It was a really interesting conversation. I was a little, honestly, I think me and Charlie didn't really want to say anything, because she was just like, we wanted to give her all this time so she could just explain this, or
we've got every week.
Yeah, it's just like she had so much information, and it was almost like I wish she'd just been able to keep going, because I think a lot of people need to hear what she has to say.
Absolutely, a lot of people do, and a lot of people I think aren't really hip on this voter suppression thing.
I mean, before this show, had no idea.
Yeah, you had no idea about this, right? And like I said, I'm gonna put the articles are up on MikeRileyNow.com. If you go on there, you can click on one. It talks about Kris Kobach and crosscheck voting, and like I said, Greg Palast has this documentary called "The Best Democracy Money Can Buy" that you can see. And I'm telling you right now, this is a very, very dire issue. This is bigger than any Russian hack. This is bigger than whatever else is going on. Voter suppression is something like Holly was talking about earlier. It's as American as apple pie gets. It's in some form or another since the inception of this nation. There has been some effort to suppress the vote from some certain group of people at some point. Even after the 14th Amendment and 15th Amendments passed, and even after the 19th Amendment passed and women were given the right to vote, there was still forms of voter suppression through poll taxes, through literacy tests, through things like that. That's what the whole Selma movie was about. Not Selma movie. Look at me, I'm such a millennial. It was an actual event.
It was a legitimate.
That's what the movie was about.
That's what the movie was. That's what that whole movie was about. Not the actual.
It had nothing to do with like the real thing. That
yeah,
Spoiler alert, guys! It actually happened.
So, yeah, but that's what that whole event was about. And these things are still taking place till this day. This idea that there is voter fraud that takes place in this country, and we've mentioned this before, is just not true. It is not an actual thing, and it's really serious. But like I said, it's something that we're gonna try to address more in the future. We're gonna try to put more emphasis on it in the future. You know, as we talk about this. I don't know if that last part made sense. But
it's all good.
It's all good. It makes sense. It's a work in progress. All right, y'all. We'll be right back. The Mike Rally Now podcast. MikeRallyNow.com. Young Angels of America Network. You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRallyNow.com. Yeah. And welcome back to the Mike Rally Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. Make sure y'all log on to youngangelsofamerica.org. Give it a check out. Please donate. That's how we keep the lights on up in here. Also, to log on to MikeRallyNow.com. Make sure you subscribe to all the social medias. Please leave some feedback on Facebook, on the Twitters, on the Instagrams, on the YouTubes, all that cool stuff. And next week, if anybody is going to be in Washington, D.C. for the inauguration, so will I. We will be filming part of our web series, The Uninformed States of America, out there. So if you happen to be in Washington, D.C. For the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States, and possibly the last President of the United States.
Which is very possible.
Yeah, which is very possible. I'm not joking when I say it.
I think everyone in this room is very much like,
yeah, that
like think that's really possible.
Yeah, that can happen. Hit me up. You can go on MikeRallyNow.com and follow the link there, and you can drop me an RSVP, and we'll link up when we're out there, and I'll get you guys on film. All right. Welcome back to the show. So, like I said, this is our first show since we've been back from the new year. Happy 2017 to everybody again. I know we didn't get a big chance to get into that at the beginning of the show, but getting taken into this new year, well, actually, just looking back over the past 8 years has been somewhat of a emotional discourse for me over these past couple of days. I don't know if y'all got a chance to check out Obama's farewell speech the other night.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, tear jerker, right?
I remember
like
waking up. I'd seen it and like I'd gone to sleep, and then I woke up and there was all these things on social media about it, and everywhere you looked, it was there, and like I was like, no,
yeah,
no, you can't leave.
Like, don't leave. And then today he gave Joe Biden the presidential medal.
The candid reaction of Joe
Biden.
That
was
he had
just
to turn around.
I just love
the camaraderie
Joe
between.
I love Joe Biden
and Obama together. It's like
the memes.
They're like homeboys and
shit. Especially for me and Charlie, and for probably a lot of the younger audience, it's like Joe Biden and Obama leaving the office means that we're not going to get any more Joe Biden and Obama.
Yeah,
right.
Like,
yeah,
the bromance is
dead. Yeah, it's dead.
It's
gone,
dead.
And it's a little sad. It's a little disheartening.
Yeah, and I think that it's really a big deal for millennials and people slightly younger in Cameron and my age group. Because Obama was our president. You know, he was the president when we were growing up and beginning to actually learn and care about politics. And it's terrifying to see this almost security blanket that you've had growing up. This is how you know the government. This is how you know politics. This is the figurehead you've grown up with, knowing this is everything that American politics embodies. And now to have that change and sort of have the blanket ripped out from underneath you.
Yeah.
Well, because there was like, no matter how bad, like someone that got elected for some sort of official position or some sort of decision they made is that Obama was there.
We had Obama.
And that
right.
And that it couldn't get that bad. Like, he was there and he had
like
power.
He felt some level of security.
Like that he was
right.
there and he could help change it.
He won't let us down kind of feeling.
You know, Joe Biden mentioned that today. He said, every president's had their conflicts. I mean, there was a Civil War, there was World War II, there was all these big things that happened, but the way Barack Obama handled himself under conflict, when under pressure, Joe Biden said is something he's never even witnessed. The way he kept it together, and that's something you got to commend him on. Hate the guy or love the guy. And I know a lot of people hate the guy. I love Barack Obama personally. There's a lot of things he did that I definitely disagree with, but at the same time, you got to give the guy his props. I mean, he was
obviously he got a couple gray hairs, but that's inevitable when you're
in the hardest position in the country.
But he just
Brooke pointed out we do have Alec Baldwin. Yeah.
4 years. He's just committed.
Alec Baldwin committed to 4 years of clowning Trump. I guess that's a good thing. I guess there's some good thing. You know what the president of CBS said? You know what the president of CBS said? I wish I had the audio clip. He said Donald Trump's going to be horrible for the country, but it'll be great for the ratings.
Yeah.
Comma quote. The guy said that. That's what he said. But to kind of piggyback off of Obama's farewell speech he did last night, I want to play you this clip because Obama said something at the end of his speech that really got me going. I mean, it's basically a call to action. Listen to this.
When trust in our institutions is low, we should reduce the corrosive influence of money in our politics and insist on the principles of transparency and ethics in public service. When Congress is dysfunctional, we should draw our congressional districts to encourage politicians to cater to common sense and not rigid extremes. But remember, none of this happens on its own. All of this depends on our participation.
Bam.
On each of us accepting the responsibility of citizenship.
Bam, bam.
Regardless of which way the pendulum of power happens to be swinging.
Mic drop.
Our Constitution is a remarkable, beautiful gift.
It's all right.
But it's really...
It's a remarkable, beautiful gift.
Just a piece of parchment. It has no power on its own. We, the people, give it power.
All right. Bam. I'm going to stop it right there. That right there, to me, was the biggest call to action. Not that anybody's ever put out there, but for him to end his speech like that. Don't forget, a president's farewell speech is basically what he's leaving the country with. Every president's been very famous for their farewell speeches. George Washington had a very famous farewell speech. I think the one that sticks out the most for a lot of people in our generation was the one that was given by Dwight D. Eisenhower when he was speaking against the military-industrial complex and warning Americans about it, which is something that Dwight Eisenhower warned us about, and sure enough, it's something that we're dealing with now. But for President Obama to end his speech, to end his tenure as president of the United States by telling people that your participation within our democracy is that vital. That call to action, to me, is that same kind of, it holds that same kind of power under it. It's the same kind of warning that if we don't get up and start getting involved, if we don't start involving ourselves in the process, we're going to be pretty much doomed, for lack of a better term. One of the things that Obama said in the speech as well is, if you don't like the way, government's being ran, if you don't like the way things are going, get your ass up and go run for office. Run for your, join your local Democratic Party. I say Democratic for all my Democrats out there, but even my Republicans, all my Republicans out there, join your local Democratic Party.
You mean?
No, I mean join your local.
I mean, like,
join something. Just do something.
That's what we've done.
Right.
No, I mean, with this election, we had so many feelings and so many attitudes towards it, and we had no
outlet.
We had no output. We had no place to vent about how we felt, and then we discovered this.
Right. Yes.
And it's been brilliant. It's,
yeah.
It's I know for a fact for me that it's changed in the entirety of how I see not only American politics, but what I want to do with my life and what the path that I see I need to take.
He's gonna cry.
Oh, he's tearing up here. Oh, look at him. Yeah, you guys, I'm really mean. I don't make nice things much. This is real rare occurrence. But yeah, I think it's things like this, and no matter what you do, if you run a blog, if you get involved in a local party, anything that allows you to realize that you have a voice, and it doesn't matter if 3 people or 3 million people are listening.
Exactly. Very well said, Charlie, and God bless you for trust me. And you are a big voice in this thing, and we all have to be a big voice and in this movement. And we do have to treat this like a movement. We do have to treat this like the resistance. This is what it's going to take. Bernie Sanders, who I admire very much, was really big on this during his campaign about this idea of we need a political revolution within our nation. Mm-hmm. This political revolution has to be us getting involved in the process. I was talking to my roommates the other night, and I was talking to them, and they were asking me, well, what do we do? We went out and voted. We did that. We did this, and still, and I tell them that I that's not enough. I get it that politics isn't, and government isn't it's not the funnest thing. I mean, for me, it's fun, but I'm a political junkie. So, but I can understand for people who aren't political junkies how this isn't
definitely not everyone's cup
right.
of tea.
It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's hard to get into it.
Yeah. But
this is some serious shit. This isn't. Bless you, Cam just tried not to sneeze on the mic. God bless her. But this isn't a game.
No. This
isn't who's winning the Super Bowl. This isn't what the Kardashians had on last night. This isn't who won this. This isn't minute. This is our life.
Well, this is history. It's history in the making, and I constantly think, I'm sure Cameron does the same. I'm sitting at home and I'm reading my AP US history book that I have to read every single day. Mm-hmm. And throughout those pages, I see massive gaps when nothing's happened, and it skips it because nothing important happened that year. Right. Nothing worth mentioning. And I think I don't want the years of my life to be skipped past in a history book because we did nothing important.
Right.
And so every single time you think, what can we do? We can't just start a revolution. Well, how do you think every single other revolution got bloody started?
Yeah, how do you think every revolution got started? Yeah. It got started that way. By that person, exactly.
It's like people have to understand that these decisions that are made are not, like you were saying, like they're not just, who won a football game, or like these decisions will impact for so long beyond us even being alive. Like and that's what people need to understand, is that you kind of need to get a little bit over yourself.
More. I'll tell you what.
You need to be a little bit more aware.
I'll tell you what. You brought up something amazing right now, Cam. They're about ready to take away. The Republicans tonight are going to vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Yep. They're taking it away. It's going away. And I promise you, despite what Paul Ryan has to say, and I just saw him in a town hall meeting right now, they do not have a replacement. They don't have a replacement solution. They don't have shit. You can go on Paul Ryan's website. It's an idea, but it's not a significant replacement. They keep talking about things they want to keep and things they want to take away. Taking away the Affordable Care Act and not building on it like Hillary Clinton wanted to do is going to affect us for generations. This isn't a small time thing. This is going to have a heavy, heavy, heavy weight to it going into the future. When 20 million people are kicked off of healthcare. Elections have consequences. These things matter. And like I said before, I know it's politics. I know, and I try my best to get people into it. Trust me. I mean, you know, I'm your average everyday Joe for the most part. I like to do things that normal people do. You know, like go skydiving and hunt for gophers and you know, cook pizzas on the roof, just like normal people.
Yeah.
But
average people.
And count my millions and millions of dollars every day.
Take your rocket ship into space.
Yeah, I do normal people stuff, but I still understand how importantly dire our government and the things that occur within it are. You know, we have to think about our future. Think about climate change. Think about it.
My goodness.
We may not have a planet to live on. A habitable planet to live on pretty soon.
It's also quite interesting because I know in school, and you know, we've talked about this a couple of times, it's like they'll talk about it.
Right.
But they don't, they want to tiptoe around it.
They don't actively encourage debate about it, or...
Because they don't, you know, want, you know, to get in trouble or, like, you know, to have someone's feelings hurt. But, like, you gotta... Both sides. This is for everyone. You have to be respectful, obviously. But you also have to fight for what you believe in and be taught at a young age that you need to fight for what you believe in.
Yeah, and you need to... I mean, I understand if politics isn't your cup of tea, but... You honestly, you have to give a damn about politics, because it's, if you're just sitting by and letting someone else who has a higher position in power than you, let them run their own personal agenda under the disguise as helping you, you're literally getting screwed over, and you don't have the decency of yourself to... Or
to the people that come after you.
Yeah.
It's not just about you. It's... Everyone that comes after you are just as important.
Politics isn't selfish, and it's become that, and that's the issue with our generation, is that we're so self-focused. Yes, that we forget that there is a generation that will be following us, and ones that have come before us that have gotten to us to where we are now, and that we need to pay respect to that and continue what they've created.
And whether or not those things were bad or good, they worked at it, and we're not. We're ignoring it, and we're thinking, oh, well, if it's not happening right now, then, like, what's the point? But
get off your asses, America.
Please. Exactly.
Get involved. Couldn't have said it better myself. Damn it, Charlie and Cam, you two deserve your own podcast. All right. All right, y'all. That is our show. I want to thank every single last one of you for joining us today. I want to thank our guest, Holly Mosher, for joining us today. God bless Cameron. God bless Brooke. God bless Charlie. God bless every single last one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join us next week, and make sure you log on to MikeRileyNow.com, YoungAngelsOfAmerica.org, and do all the following and whatnot. All right, y'all. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. It starts with you. You have to get involved. We're all in this together. Please, for the love of God, Donald Trump is our president now. All right, y'all. See you next week from D.C. Cheers.
All right, Mikey. Good show.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.